Hi everybody, this is Everyday Commentary. It's been a long time since I've done a video, but I'm going to try to do one today and see how it works. This is going to be sort of a rant, maybe a little bit, but it's going to be focused mainly on this light right here, which is the Prometheus Lights Delta. And this is a relatively new high-end flashlight from Prometheus Lights, which is owned by Jason who also owns, now owns 47s. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this light. I'm going to compare it to these two lights. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the state of gear in 2019. So first of all, let's just go through this. This is a 1-18350 light. It has 3 emitters. It has user swappable optics, which is pretty awesome. It has a solid copper pill. It has its own custom board with its own programming. It runs on this really nice clicky. It can be very low, very dim. I mean, look at that. It doesn't even blow out the lens. Or it can go really, really, really high, up to 1,000 lumens, which is not as high as you can get. Like this light can go to 3,500 lumens, which is still the brightest light in the market for this size. So it's not a flamethrower like the Boss 35 is. But this light is a really, really nicely made light, in addition to being plenty bright enough. This version, and there are multiple versions, and then there are special limited run versions. This version is the nickel-plated aluminum, and it comes in titanium. You can also get it in titanium. I think I'm probably pretty much done with buying lights in titanium, especially because if they run hot enough, the titanium doesn't do enough to dissipate the heat, and it really impacts the performance. So kind of done with titanium lights, especially when aluminum could be made to look this nice. I mean, this is a light I carry every day. As you can see, there's like smudges and fingerprints on it. I could clean it up and make it look a lot nicer, but it's a user and it works really, really well. So the UI is great. It has a 10 clicky programmable, so if you click it 10 times, you get dropped down into a bunch of different modes. I'm not going to go through the modes here. It's pretty complicated, and quite frankly, all of that is boring. But it has, as you can see, it has mode memory. So it is a really nice, it comes on and low, and then you can click it again, medium, high, and then ultra high, and then it goes back to low. So pretty standard. You can configure it a bunch of different ways. It did not come set this way. I had to go into the programming and set it that way. So that's sort of an overview of the light, and I'm going to do what I normally do and talk about what I like and what I don't like. So the first thing is, this light is a really good size. As you can see, it's not a compact light. It's probably, leagues away from something like this, which is the light I carry today, and this is the 47's Mark III Turbo. Also a light Jason designed. Really, really great light. Probably one of my favorite lights to carry on a regular basis. Super small, and as you can see, even though they run the same batteries, this one is just substantially bigger. That being said, it's not gigantic. It's not quite it's just a smidge taller than the Haiku, and it is, as you can see, noticeably taller than the Boss 35. I think that this light has a really good size. It fits in your finger well. It allows you to use it and manipulate it. I actually took it with me on Halloween. It did great. It had no issues. I also took it on a recent night hike that we did, and I let it sit in the snow, illuminating a tree we were decorating in the middle of the night, and it lasted on high for probably an hour. I think that had to do with the fact that it was literally in ice. So it wasn't on turbo, it was on high, and it did fine. It threw out plenty of light. It did eventually die, so this light has officially been charged one time since I got it. I think I got it into September, beginning of October. It's a really, really good size. It's something that you know that it's there, but it's not so big that it can't fit in your pocket, it has a good pocket clip so you can carry it. Just a side note, Jason makes the best pocket clips. These are just the best pocket clips. Every pocket clip he makes, whether it's a friction fit like the mini I just showed you, or it's a washer style clip like this one, they're just amazing. They're always good. They always work. They're really, really, really well done. And they're not like some garbage sculpted titanium clip, which is just a total waste of time. I also like how responsive the clicky is. I mean, it's really good. You know, it's impossible to hit it by accident. It's sunk in just enough, but it still has this nice dished out tail cap, so you can get to it pretty easy. I really, really like that. The other thing that I want to say is I love the way Jason's stuff looks. It just always looks beautiful. And even here, when this thing is like covered in finger grease and dirty because I use it and carry it, it's still freaking amazing. It still looks like $1 million. I mean, it looks like something from the future, or a prop in a movie, like the hero prop in a movie. It's just absolutely beautiful. It doesn't have the sort of rugged look or the sort of Art Deco look that the Boss 35 does. And the Boss 35 obviously hides wear better. It's a stonewashed. This is a stonewashed aluminum version. You can see I carry this light too. This is an excellent light. A couple things that I'm not so thrilled about. It's really, really heavy for what it is. I mean, this light is substantially lighter than this light. And this light is way lighter than this light. So it is heavy. And I think that has to do with... Let me see if we can take it apart without blah, 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 spilling stuff all over the place. I mean, look at that. It's just a solid copper pill. So copper is super heavy. And so I get it. And the heat dissipation is something that Jason was really cognizant of. He didn't want this light to run hot. He didn't want this light to, conk out after 15 seconds. And as a result, he did a lot of work in figuring out just how best to dissipate the heat. So it's kind of a trade-off. I mean, one of the things that you have to realize is that like on a light like this, or like on the Mini, your run times on ultra high are never going to be that long. I mean, physics is just not going to let you run cranking hot for a long time. And so when you get over, let's say 500 lumens, the real issue isn't how bright your light is, but how long it can stay that bright. And by putting a lot of effort and a lot of material into the heat sink, he's kept this light running on high really long. And so it's interesting to think about, because a lot of lights out there will have this quoted high, which they use the ANSI standard to generate, and they basically do a trick. ANSI says that your high has to be at least 90 seconds, so they can all run at like some crazy high lumens count for 90 seconds, and then they drop down. But when they drop down, they still have that heat sink problem. And here you get a light that really runs bright for a really long time. It's not going to be, twice as bright as a car headlight, but it's going to be really bright, and it's going to be able to do that for a long time. And so I've long preached that run times are more important than lumens counts, and this is a light that does that, but the cost of that is this really beefy heat sink, which makes the light very heavy. The other thing that I would mention is that this light is right about the size of a really small 18650, which would give you more runtime. And so I like the choice of the battery, but if it's going to be this big, you might want to run it as an 18650. I know that would be different because his Alpha is also a flashlight that he makes that is an 18650, and it's a little bit bigger. So I get why he chose that battery format, but the market is getting really competitive in terms of size and battery. So that's the other thing. Those are really the two drawbacks that I would point out that are sort of, I think that they are necessary evils. Not that they're evil, they're actually not that bad a drawback, but I think that they're necessary given what he's trying to do here and how his lineup is situated. Overall, this is a freaking amazing light. It's absolutely gorgeous. If I had to choose a light and I could only choose two, these two, or maybe, a tie between this one and the Aeon, but those three lights are the best lights on the market, and I really have no hesitation. There's a lot of machine lights out there that run like off the shelf boards, whereas Jason's board here is custom, and it is a really high quality board. I can tell you that like some of the boards that come on or that are installed, they're like $8, $10, and it's not to say that price is determinative, but they're not designed for the light. Jason's programming and the board are all custom to him, and they start at $54, so they're pretty expensive, and it's because he's done a lot to make sure that they always work and they always look nice and when they're shining out the front. The other thing that's really cool about this light is that it has swappable optics. I have not taken advantage of this yet. These are still the optics that it came with, but I got a bunch of optics to try out and take a look at. So once I have a little bit more experience with them, I'll talk about them. But this leads me into the rant that I have about 2019, and it's pretty simple. There were lots of interesting pieces of gear that came out in 2019. There was a lot of good gear that was available, but there really wasn't a lot of new gear. And while this light came out in 2018, it's still pretty limited in availability, but availability, has come online to the point where, 2019, you could get one of these if you really wanted it. And that just talks about a couple of things. Number one, I think the idea of limited runs is stupid. Limited runs are a way of generating free marketing buzz, which is fine, but it seems to me that if you have a good idea, it's probably in your best interest to exploit that idea as much as possible to make as much money as possible. And limited runs aren't that. Now, maybe it is that there are limited runs that aren't such great ideas, but because they're limited runs, people want them. But if you have a good idea like this light, then make as many as you can, which is what Jason is doing. The other thing that really bothered me about gear in 2019 was a lot of it was derivative. There was just a million different sprint runs and limited runs and scale swaps and steel swaps. And, I enjoy watching variants and new knives come out, but I'm just never going to be convinced that I need a second or third or fourth version of the Mannix or the Shaman or the PM3. I'm sorry, the Para 3. I did that for a while with the Dragonfly, and I kept buying the new variants, and then I realized none of them are substantially better than the ZDP 189 version, and so I really haven't chased any of them, even though I've owned, I think, 11 or 12. And so I'd much rather see the gear world go the direction that this light is indicating, as opposed to yet another Para 3. This light, there's a lot of new stuff in this light. There's a lot of innovation in this light. It does something different. It fills a spot in Jason's lineup, and all of that is good. And I like seeing, nice, well-made stuff that's new and different. And I am worried that we have entered the Tulip Mania phase of the gear boom, and that we are going to be hunting these weird, random, small sprint runs over wanting new, innovative stuff. And that if the companies try to match the market, as opposed to do what really successful companies do, which is to create a market, they will just chase the sprint runs, and we will chase them until they've sold every possible variant and no one is interested in knives or flashlights or gear anymore. And so I really think that this light embodies what the ideal trajectory of the market is, which is new stuff that builds on old stuff and does it really, really, really well, and is not a limited run. I understand that people have a hard time getting stuff. I understand that people want TRM to make more knives, and people want Jason to make more flashlights, and some of that is just the process of scaling up or limitations placed on output by quality, and that doesn't bother me. But this limited run, or a new knife every week, or a new sprint every week, that stuff just doesn't seem to trip my trigger. I mean, there's only so many ways that Civivi can repackage the same basic, pivot and lock with different blade shapes or different handles and make it interesting. Like the Elementum was nice, but then they made 7 other knives that were just like that, and they released them all, 1 week after another. And so I think that there's too much stuff on the market that's like other stuff, and I think that there is too much stuff being released in too short a time period, that none of the stuff is giving time to breathe, and certainly none of it's getting time to mature. You look at Spyderco, and their success is based on iterating their evergreen models, and Civivi produces 15 knives, 20 knives a year, and there's certainly no going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, what of this knife really worked? Let's refine it and make it better and release it again. They're just going to release a entirely new knife, which is fine, but I don't think that's sustainable in the long run. And I don't think the chasing sprints is sustainable in the long run either, because at some point you have to say, are we expanding the market to new people, or are we selling knives to the same people? And if you're expanding the market to new people, that's healthier and more sustainable than selling knives to the same people, because eventually, no matter how crazy the collectors are, they're going to be like, I have 17 variants. I don't need an 18th. I don't know where that point is, but if you look at every other form of collectible since the beginning of, market economies, that's happened. That's exactly what happened in the Tulip Mania thing in the Holland and the Netherlands. And it doesn't seem all that different than chasing variants or flooding the market with new designs, 1 or 2 a week. So that's my rant. That's my review of the Prometheus Delta. It's a fantastic light. If you have a chance, pick one up. They're really good. They are expensive. This one was $365. Titanium model will be $200 more. You should really not be getting titanium on your flashlights anymore, given how bright they get and how much of a heat impact it is. Maybe this heat sink here that Jason designed, along with the board and the programming, will slightly ameliorate those effects. But the reality is, physics is telling us that we have run up against the limit, and the brighter you get, the more heat dissipation you need, and titanium doesn't do that as well as aluminum. So, in conclusion, great light. Check out the written review. Let's hope that there's more stuff like this and less stuff like a Canvas micarta Crewwear Shaman. See you later.